Greetings in the name of the Lord. I'm stirred up. I'm compelled to share this word with you. And my challenge and my question for this particular message is, why are you following Christ? What's your purpose? What's your goal? What's your intent for following the Lord? So I'm going to walk through John chapter 6 to see an example of why some of the people in the Bible were following Christ. And we'll go from there. So I don't have that much time, so just roll with me. I'm going to bounce through chapter 6. Please read the whole chapter, that way you can see the full picture. All right, here we go. John chapter 6 verse 2 says, "A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs which he was performing on those who were sick." So that's one reason that people were following him. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs which he was performing on those who were sick. If you read back in chapter 5, he had just healed a man who had been sick for 38 years, I believe. So read chapter 5 too, because each chapter flows together. So, okay, that's verse number 2. Verse number 14, chapter 6. "Therefore, when the people saw the sign which he had performed, they said, 'This is truly the prophet who is come into the world.'" So again, we see they saw the sign. What this sign was the feeding of the 5,000. They saw Jesus take 2 fish and 5 loaves and feed 5,000 people. So when they saw that, they said, "Man, this is truly the prophet who is coming to the world." So I can imagine they were astounded. So verse 22 says, "The next day, the crowd that stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was no other small boat there." So what happened here, if you read the verses up, this is where after he fed them, the disciples got in the boat and left, and Jesus was I believe he went in the mountain. He went in the mountains by himself. So the disciples got in the boat, and Jesus walked on the water to get to them. So they crossed over to the other side, and these same people, this same crowd, looked and they saw that there was no other boat. So they were wondering how it says, "Except one," and that Jesus had not entered with his disciples into the boat, but that his disciples had gone away alone. So the crowd was kind of wondering what had happened. How did Jesus get over there? So they constantly were seeing things, and this was the reason why they were following him. So my challenge and my question to you is, why are you following Christ? Are you following Christ because you want to truly serve him? You want to please him? You want to honor him? You want to give your life to him? You want to sell out to him? Or are you following him because you might have seen a miracle? You might have seen a sign that God performed on somebody, and you're just kind of following along? Are you following him out of religion or tradition? What is the real purpose and the real reason why you're following the Lord Jesus, or why you're attempting to follow God? Because if you keep reading chapter 6, these people in verse 34, they said, "Lord, always give us this bread," because they had been eating fish and bread. So they said, "Always give us this bread," talking about natural bread. Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." He was talking about spiritual bread that comes from heaven. He said, "I am the bread of life." And they got upset. And if you read all the way to the end of this chapter, they end up walking away from him, because when it really came down to him, they were following him for the wrong reason, because they had gotten full and they wanted more bread. And he was like, "Well, I'm the bread of life. You got to eat of my flesh and drink of my blood." He was talking about spiritual things, and they didn't understand that. They wanted to stay in the flesh. So I challenge you, I don't have that much time, but I challenge you to really search your heart and ask yourself, why am I following Christ? Why am I going to church? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Is it really out of a pure heart to see God when this life